Welcome to Coach Bennett's podcast, where every run has a purpose, where kindness is hardcore, where this is about running, and this is not about running, where every starting line is a finish line in disguise, where rambling still gets you where you need to be, where pineapple will never ruin your pizza, and the sodas, adult and not adult kind, are always cold, and where there is room on the starting line for everybody. I'm Coach Bennett. Thank you for letting me be a part of your day. Let's get started. Well, welcome to episode 35, Mistakes I've Made So You Don't Have to. That's right. I'm going to be going through a whole bunch of mistakes. Not all of them, dare I say. That would take too long. That would be episode 35 through probably 135 to catalog all the mistakes I've made, but we're going to go through some of the mistakes I've made so you don't have to. See, this is how I operate, and this is how I operated as a coach, not just in life, but I don't think you have to screw up to understand the lesson of that screw up. And there are some people who think, you gotta fall down to know that it hurts. I don't think so. I think if you fall down, you experience that hurt, but I'm pretty sure seeing a large number of people fall down in my life, I figured it out for myself just by watching. I did not need to fall down myself, skin my knees, break an elbow, twist an ankle, chip a tooth to figure out, that hurts. I don't want to do that. So this is my way of sharing some of my misery with all of you so you don't have to share in the misery. And we're going to go through a bunch of different things. Most of them are, yes, in fact, running related. Some of them may sneak in there because I think it's just important for you to know as a runner, as a non-runner, both, that these are some things that you do not need to do or experience because I've done it for you. And I can tell you, you don't need to do it. So like, for instance, this past week, I've been traveling. I was in Arizona at the beginning of last week, and then I was in Los Angeles, and then I made my way to Miami for the weekend, all running-related stuff. But the week prior to that, it was icy here in Portland. Really icy, sketchy icy, dangerous icy. And I did not run on the ice. I'll tell you why I didn't run on the ice. Because I've tried to run on the ice before. I don't have on crampons or whatever they're called and big spikes that I attach to my trainers. I don't live in some area of the world where that's needed. So I don't have them. I just have your normal trainers. So when I go and run on ice, it's slippery. It's dangerous. And there is a very high likelihood that I will fall down. How do I know that? Because I've tried to run on ice before, and I have fallen down. Not only that, leading up to the inevitable wipe-out crash that occurs, I'm slipping and sliding, and my form is bad. And I'll tell you what, not only am I nursing some bruising and probably some open wounds from falling down the next day, but that next day is also got me totally sore from slipping and sliding and being unable to maintain anything even remotely close to a normal running form. So what I'm trying to tell you here is you do not need to go out and run on icy roads or trails because I've done it. It's not worth it. It's stupid. It's moronic. It's dangerous. You're setting yourself up for a fall. And I don't mean in the way of like, hey, there's risk and there's reward and there are no guarantees. And you hear me talking about these things. Yeah. I'm saying the risks far outweigh the reward. If you have ice waiting for you on your run, you're not going to get in a good run. And if for some infinitesimal possibility you get in a halfway decent run, it wasn't worth it. I'm sorry. Because you should have fallen down. You probably should have gotten hurt. And at a minimum, you should be really, really, really sore over the next couple days, which means from a coaching perspective, we're not going to get to do all the things I want us to do, over the next couple of days because you ran on the ice. And even if you didn't fall down, you probably slipped and you slid and now you're sore. I didn't want you sore. I just wanted you to go out and get a decent run. So go put on my 80s mix that I made and just dance for 30 minutes or 45 minutes. Your cardio is going to get up. You're going to be bouncing around. You're going to be jumping around. You're going to be getting some air while you're dancing. All of these things are what you do when you run. You're going to be experiencing an elevated heart rate. It's going to be a lot of fun, and you will not have gotten hurt. So there are lots of things you can do. Oh, and the other thing is, yes, you can use a treadmill if you have access to one. I don't, so dancing is probably the better option if you don't have a treadmill. Although I will say this, last week I ran around my house. I mentioned that, I believe, in the previous episode of Coach Bennett's podcast. I ran around the house. And I'll tell you what, it was not fun, but a little note, which I said last week as well, make sure if you're running around your house, like, from one room to another, you're trying to go for duration and not distance. GPS doesn't work inside your house when you're running around. It's going to take you like 2 days to get, 2K. So just run for duration. But my point is, you don't need to run on the ice because I've done it. It's not worth it. Don't do it. And yes, I'm fully aware some of you are going to bring up, I've got spikes that I hook onto my shoes. That's great. You're hardcore. For those of us, the 99.9% of us that don't have metallic spikes to attach to our running trainers, we're just going to stay off the ice. All right. Next, this one. I've done a beer mile and I've done a chocolate milk mile. You don't have to. Now, here's the thing. If you want to, go ahead. I'm just saying you don't have to. This doesn't have to be something on the bucket list. And this isn't something that I would sit you down and say, listen, before you kick that bucket, make sure you do a beer mile or a chocolate milk mile. Now, for those of you who are wondering, what in the world are you talking about, man? I'll tell you, a beer mile or a chocolate milk mile is a very simple concept. You get on a starting line, and before you start a mile or 4 laps on a track, you chug either a beer or a glass of milk. Now, it doesn't have to be a glass, but like a keg cup, basically, of chocolate milk. Then you run 400 meters as fast as you can. When you finish that lap, there's another beer or another chocolate milk waiting for you. You chug said beer or said chocolate milk. By the way, they're not together. You don't ever want to mix. It's either a beer mile or a chocolate milk mile. Point is, you have a beer or a chocolate milk right before your first lap, right before your second lap, right before your third lap, and yes, right before your final lap. So you have 4 beers or 4 big cups of chocolate milk while you try to run a mile as fast as you can. Now, this used to be something kind of like a little underground. So if you were a runner and you were on a team, usually in between seasons or before a season, something like this would just kind of happen. You'd be at a party or a get-together and people would say, let's do a beer mile, let's do a chocolate milk mile. And you would go out and you would think this is going to be a lot of fun. And it wasn't. It was as gross as it sounds. Now, I've done both. And I will say this, I had bigger issues after the chocolate milk mile than I did with the beer mile. And it took me at least 90 minutes after the chocolate milk mile to, we'll just say, settle down. I felt as if I had done the beer mile after the chocolate milk mile. It was brutal. It was brutal. And we actually did, the last one I did was at Bennett Running Camp, which was the high school sleepaway camp that my wife and I put on in the Pennsylvania mountains. We had about 250 kids, and we had the counselors and some of the coaches competed in a chocolate milk mile. And I think maybe part of the reason why I struggled so much at the end of that one was because it started, basically there was a table full of gallons of chocolate milk, and we were pouring them in keg cups, and you had to, pound your chocolate milk, and then you were launched downhill in this kind of quad area. Of course, you had to run uphill to get back to finish the lap. Yeah, I'm going to say that uphill. By the 3rd time I was heading up that hill, I was wondering if this was a bad idea. By the 4th lap, the final lap, I was confirmed this was a bad idea. But I did it, And I'm just saying, you don't have to do it. You have been forewarned. There can be issues. I'm just going to leave it at that. That's a lot of milk in the midst of a very hard effort. So you do the math on that one. But yeah, you don't have to do a chocolate milk mile or a beer mile if you don't want to. All right? All right, another one. I've run with a phone in my hand. You don't need to do this. In fact, you should not do this. Do not run with a phone in your hand. And the reason is pretty simple. If you fall, if you stumble, you will first try to protect your phone instead of your face. And I would just much rather you protect your face. That's all. Just protect your face. And you can do that by having both hands available to break a fall or to balance you or to grab onto something you're passing like a tree or something. But if you have that phone, the tendency is, I need to protect this phone. And you start making all sorts of bad decisions. Like I said, like I'll hold on to the phone and I will not use that arm to break my fall. I will not use that hand to grab onto something. I will just use my arm, my hand to protect the phone. And that's leaving a lot of really important things unprotected. Like I said, most noticeably, your face. So take advantage of pockets, because nowadays shorts, running tights, running pants, shirts, bras, jackets, they usually have a pocket for your cell phone. And if you don't have any kind of apparel that has a pocket for your cell phone, then what you need to do is you need to go out and get like an armband or some type of fanny pack for your phone. Because you may be running with your phone because you like having your phone with you for a number of reasons. You may be using a running app. You may be using it as like a stopwatch. It may be for safety reasons. You want people to know where you are, or you want access to people through the phone. Great, fantastic. You want to be comfortable when you're running. What you're going to need to do is invest in, like I said, either apparel that has pockets or a fanny pack or an armband that can hold the phone. It's an investment in your running, and it's an investment into having a more comfortable run. So just do it. Just go out there and take care of these things. Now, I have run with a phone, and I have done the stupid that comes along with it by, holding on to the phone and falling really awkwardly. No grace. And leaving something like my face open to being, hurt pretty badly. And it's, when I say your face, maybe it'll resonate more if I say your face is attached to your head, and your head is what protects your brain, and your brain's really important. So the smart thing to do would be to use your brain and realize running and holding a phone ain't smart. So I've done it. You don't need to do it. Be smarter than I was, or be as smart as I am, and don't run with a phone in your hand. Okay? All right, another thing that I have done, I've made the mistake of, and now that means you do not have to do it, is I've worn shoes that didn't fit, and I've gotten terrible blisters. Yeah. And I've done it both ways. I've worn shoes that were too small, and I've worn shoes that were too big. And with running, you have to remember what's happening when you're running. It's not the same thing as when you're walking. When you land, okay, your foot slides forward. It needs some room. So if you're wearing a pair of shoes that are too small, your little toesies are going to be smashing into the front of the shoes. If you imagine, like, if you just painted like a little face onto the front of your toes, maybe this is the best way to do it. You don't want those beautiful little faces on your little bitty toes to smash into a wall, which is the front of the shoe. You want them to slide forward, and it's almost like a carnival ride. Like every time your foot lands, your toes are going like, whoa, but they get real close to the wall, but they don't hit the wall. That's what you're going for. But if your shoes are too small, every single time you land and your foot slides forward, boom, they're smashing their face into the wall. And what's going to happen is a couple things. You're probably going to get some blisters on the front of your toes. You're probably going to lose a few toenails too. So you're going to have some gnarly looking feet, like really gnarly looking feet, I always imagine like Gollum type feet. That's what you're going to have. And it's not the shoe's fault. The shoes are doing their job. You're just trying to jam in a foot that does not belong there. It's like one of Cinderella's sisters. Like, no, honey, this doesn't fit. These shoes are not for you. They're for someone else. And you have issues also if the shoes are too big. Because what happens is you're supposed to have an element of stability with the shoes you're wearing, not just because of the type of shoe it is, but because of how it fits your foot. And if it doesn't fit, you're going to limit the amount of stability you have when you land, especially if the shoe is too big. So now you're not just sliding forward, you're kind of swimming all over the place. You're sliding forward and you're also sliding a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. There's lots of movement because the shoe is just too big. And what's happening is you're having lots of friction. Every time you land your foot sliding forward, it's sliding all over the place in there, and it's like you're almost rubbing your hands together. Now, if you were to rub your hands together, a little bit like Mr. Miyagi does in Karate Kid, you can imagine it starts to heat up. And if it heats up enough, you start to have burns. Those burns come across as blisters. So I have done that. I have worn shoes that were too big. I have worn shoes that are too small, and I have gotten blisters both times, and all I needed to do was go back to the running store or just put them in a box and send them back to where I bought them and say, they don't fit, which is why now, before I go for a run, I walk around in the shoes. It doesn't have to be for 3 days, like some people say. Walk around your house or your apartment for an hour. Or what you can do is you can make sure you're wearing the right size shoes simply by standing up in them and then putting a thumb down between your biggest toe and the front of the shoe. You want about a thumbnail's width between your biggest toe and the front of the shoe, because when you slide forward, it's about a thumbnail's width, so you're going to have enough room where you're not smashing into the front of the shoe, but not too much room where you're swimming all around your shoe. So that's something you don't need to do. You don't need to be getting blisters from shoes that don't fit. You don't need to do it. Let's keep moving on with some mistakes you don't need to make, because I have ingloriously done them myself. I have not kept toilet paper in my car. Ooh, baby. Yeah, so here's a little tip, especially for runners. Always have a roll of toilet paper in your car. And if you're being smart, you always have two, because this is what you want to do. You want to keep one roll of toilet paper in your car. It's like your private collection, okay? And then you want a second roll that you have on hand just in case that porta potty at the trailhead doesn't have toilet paper. So you're kind of gifting the community a little bit of toilet paper. I do this occasionally where I'll show up, and if I notice there's no toilet paper, I just leave one in there just as a kind of, thank you to the sport, because I've been there where you walk in and you're kind of in a hurry because business needs to be taken care of, and suddenly you sit down and you don't think to look, and we'll just say halfway through the business meeting taking place, and suddenly you realize that looks awfully empty, doesn't it? Where there should be a roll of toilet paper, there is just empty space. And now you've got a decision to make, especially if this is before the run. You've got a real decision to make. Am I going to wear these socks or not? Is what it comes down to. Now, if you have toilet paper with you, it's an easy decision. Keep the socks and use the toilet paper. But if you don't have the toilet paper, it looks like you just used your socks for something that wasn't expected. And let's just hope all you need is 2 socks. So, you got to use something. Because if you don't, and then you go for a run, and it's a lot. I'll just put it to you that way. We used to call it baboon ass. Anyway, chafing, it gets red anyway. So, yeah, you just keep toilet paper. And in the past, I've made the mistake of not having toilet paper on hand. And you need it, okay? You need it. The alternatives are, again, for those of you that run without socks, you're robbing yourself of a little protection there. But you don't have to worry about that if you have toilet paper. So that's a mistake that I've made that you don't need to make. All right, another one is I agreed to do a race that I should not have done. And this is going to be followed up with another one. But I remember I was running competitively, and I was running for the Nike Farm Team, and we had just done a very, very hard workout. This was Memorial Day weekend here in the United States. and it was very warm. We were training in Northern California, and that same weekend, so right after practice, I was going into Central California, Modesto area, to visit at the time, my girlfriend's grandparents, now my wife, my girlfriend's grandparents, and it was a very, very hot weekend, well over 100, where they lived. And we got down there, and I was very tired from the workout, and I was dehydrated. There were a whole host of things I was not doing, but I assumed over the course of the weekend I'm going to be taking better care of myself. And I got invited to run the local chocolate festival 5K. And instead of saying, you know what, I'm really tired, I don't think I'm going to do it. Or what I could have done was say, sure, I'll do it, but I'm not going to race. Instead, I made a bad decision and decided I'm going to show off a little bit and I'm going to race. And I ran the Chocolate Festival 5K. Yes, I won the race, but it was not worth what happened, because after that, I had to go to the chocolate festival. Why? Well, because my girlfriend, my wife, loves chocolate. So we had to go to this festival. I now had done a really hard workout the day before, ran the 5K a lot harder than I wanted to, because some locals did not want this weirdo to show up from out of nowhere and win. So they pushed really hard for the first 3K, 4K. And then, I won. But like I said, it was at great cost. I got about an hour into this chocolate festival. Keep in mind, it's very hot. And I just started to fall apart big time, to the point where I just had to find a tree and just lie down underneath it. And I remember my wife says, my girlfriend at the time says, do you want something to drink? And I said, absolutely. She says, I'll go get you a lemonade. About 10 minutes later comes back and she has chocolate. And I said, what are you doing? She says, I got some chocolate. I said, who wants chocolate right now? She went, oh yeah, you want a lemonade. Long story short, I got my lemonade, but I'm seriously having problems. I got back to her grandparents' place, literally did not get out of the bed for 12 straight hours. I would say it was the closest I had become to having some severe, dangerous issues because of the heat. And I had expended way too much energy. And it was just one of those situations where all I needed to do was have enough confidence in myself or less insecurity and just say, yes, I will do a race, but I'm going to do it in the most intelligent way possible. Or just say I'm not going to do it, but I didn't. So what I want you to do is not feel like you're ever obligated to put yourself in a position that is not a beneficial or safe or healthy one for you. All right? It may take some guts. It may take a little backbone, but you can say no. Now, I will say that's the only benefit from this story is the fact that I know when I was the most tired I've ever been. And it was that afternoon after the Chocolate Festival 5K. That is the most tired, fatigued, exhausted, wiped out I have ever been. Oh, baby. Okay, let's do another one, which is a little bit different. This has to do with racing. I also once believed I had to be in great shape to race, which is not true. That's a mistake I made. I missed out on so many fun opportunities to go out and play running by racing because I thought, nope, I'm not fit enough. I'm not going to run fast enough. I need to be so much fitter and stronger and faster if I'm going to cross the starting line of a race, which is such nonsense. Racing should be fun. Racing should be a celebration of the fact that we are runners. It does not need, nor should it ever be, a test of whether or not we are runners. It can be a test of your fitness, which is fine. Well, guess what? Fine. I've been fitter. Okay. I would like to be fitter. Fine. That's okay. But it doesn't matter. If you have fun, it's worth it. And I robbed myself of a lot of fun by lumping these, expectations around. Every time I run, I have to be so fit. Every time I run, I have to be so fast. Oh, geez. It's a regret of mine, a major regret of mine that I didn't race more, especially after I had stopped racing so competitively. I missed out on years where I could have had fun doing trail runs and local road races, low-key track meets that were at high schools and were just kind of the community. There were so many things I could have done, and I didn't because, arrogance is the wrong word, but I think they were kind of like the last vestiges of the arrogance of someone who had really trained hard and was super competitive. I still kind of looked down on the athlete that I was after I had stopped running so competitively. And that is straight up arrogance. And it's too bad because I missed out. I really did. So you don't have to be in great shape to race. You don't have to run a certain time in order to be worthy to cross the starting line of a race. If you're going to go out there and have some fun, then do it. So that was a big mistake. I've run in thunderstorms. Now, I lived in New Jersey and I lived in the Southeast where thunderstorms are super prevalent. And let me just tell you this, don't run in a thunderstorm. Don't do it. I can understand where the idea of running in a thunderstorm sounds great because it's finally raining, especially in like summertime in the Northeast or the Southeast, really, where it's so hot. But if there's thunder, that means there's lightning nearby. If there's lightning nearby, there is danger nearby. And this is the other thing. When you're out running in a thunderstorm, people see you out running in a thunderstorm. And not just people. Kids can see you out running in a thunderstorm. And what you're really doing is you're giving them license to do the same. So if you're comfortable telling kids, yeah, go run in the thunderstorm, well, you're a jerk. So, one, look after yourself. Protect yourself. Run safely by not running in a thunderstorm. But two, at least realize you have a responsibility as a runner towards other runners. Really, you do. And part of that responsibility is to do the right thing. And one of the right things you can do is not run during a thunderstorm. Find shelter, stay safe. And if you're around people that are not doing that, let them know what they're doing is really unsafe. So I've done it. I've run in thunderstorms. I don't do it anymore because I know that I will never, ever, ever forgive myself if I give somebody the excuse to go out in a thunderstorm, put themselves and their friends or teammates in danger, and God forbid something happens. So I know I'm getting a little, serious right now, but it is serious to run in a thunderstorm. Don't do it. All right. Here's another mistake I made, which is back in 2000, I went to the Olympic trials in Sacramento, California, the U.S. Olympic track and field trials. Sacramento in the summer can get very hot. The sun seems like it's really close, like abnormally close to the earth when you're in Sacramento in the summer. Now, those Olympic trials were fantastic, and I got to give Sacramento a tip of the cap. They did such a good job with those Olympic trials, and it was beautiful weather, just really, really hot and really, really sunny. So if you were prepared, then it wasn't that bad. Like if you had sunglasses, if you had a hat, if you had sunscreen on, if you had stayed hydrated, then it was probably a really enjoyable experience. I went one day, all day, and didn't have a hat on, didn't have sunglasses, and I didn't wear sunscreen. And I'm not kidding you. The next day, my nose was so sunburned that something I'm not going to get into it, but something weird was going on with my nose. It was dangerous. Or I thought, this is bad. I should probably see somebody about this. And I was on my way back to Sacramento for another day of the trials. And my nose was so torched. So was the back of my neck and my forehead and my forearms and my quads because of the way I was sitting. I was just a wreck. I was a torn up, burnt wreck. Like a torched husk of the man that I was, more like a boy, but the boy that I was prior to going to trials. So my point is, I have spent time in the sun, which you will do at a sporting event or even during a long run, and be prepared. The sun is, I'm not going to say the sun's not your friend. The sun is definitely your friend. But the sun is also someone who will kind of abuse the privileges of a friend the longer you hang out with them. unless you're kind of prepared. You know what I mean? Like, if you use the bathroom during dinner when you're hanging out with the sun, you're going to come back, and if you've left your wallet on the table, some of your money's going to be missing. I'm just saying, like, some of it, not all of it, okay? But some of it's gone, you know? Like, they're not dumb enough to take the 50 you had in your wallet, but half of the ones and 2 of the 5s are gone. That's kind of your buddy, the sun. Now, the weird thing is later in the night, your buddy, the sun, may use some of that money to buy you another drink, you know, and say, this one's on me. And you're like, that's, you know, the sun's a pretty cool dude. And you just don't realize, like, that was actually your money that the sun took during dinner. But my point is, if you're going to be spending a lot of time with the sun in any way, be prepared. Sunglasses, a hat, sunscreen, stay hydrated. And if you can, spend some time getting into the shade and getting out of that radiation from the sun. Okay? Break it up a little bit if you can. Hopefully you can. But yeah, I spent a lot of time in the sun, wildly unprepared at the 2000 Olympic trials, which means you don't need to do that. So if you're going to a meet or if you're taking part in an event, just take care of yourself. Okay? Anticipate the fact that, yes, it says it's going to be a beautiful day, but you're going to be outside for that entire beautiful day, and the sun is going to have its eyes on you. So just be prepared so you can have an awesome day and not have some type of, monstrosity of a nose like I did for a couple of days. It was weird. It was awkward, I got to tell you. Like, there were a lot of times I was talking to friends and trying to make eye contact with them because I knew what they were going to do, which was they just wanted to sneak a peek at my nose. And it's disconcerting when you're having a conversation with somebody and you see their eyes dart down to something that is obviously not, something you're really excited about showing to the world. My Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer nose. And the thing is I don't blame them. I don't blame them, because there was a lot of time I was looking in the mirror like, is that real? Like, did I do that to myself? Or did I let the sun do that to me? And the answer is, I did. Okay, another thing is I've run when I was sick and I've run when I was hurt. And don't do that. You don't need to do that. That's a mistake you don't need to make. It doesn't help. Now, here's my rule for any time you're dealing with something, whether it be an injury or some pain or some sickness. If the run you're doing doesn't end with you healthier than when you started, you can't run. That's my simple rule. It seems like a simple rule. So I used to tell my athletes when I was coaching high school, like, let's give what's bothering you a number. And it could be an issue with, let's say, their calf or their quad or their Achilles, anything. And I would say, okay, let's just give it a number in terms of, like, 0 means no pain. 100 means this is the worst pain imaginable in that area. What is it right now? And someone might say, it's a 46. I'd say, okay, now I really want you to think about this because you know yourself better than anyone else. You said, I think we said 46. I've already forgotten the number. 46. Okay, fine. 46. So 46. Now, if we do this run, will the pain be a 42 or will it be a 47 or a 48? It doesn't need to bounce up to a 60. It can just go up a little bit. It's not worth it because it means that the running is actually causing the injury or the sickness to be greater. And we're trying to heal. If we can't run and get better, if we can't run and heal, we're not going to run. We're going to focus entirely on healing or getting healthier. That's what we're going to do. Now, I have tried to run through sickness, and you know what I've done? I've extended how long I was sick. I've tried to run while I was hurt, and sometimes, not only I've just extended how long I've hurt, I've increased the severity of the injury. So by running, it led to less running, as opposed to no running leading to more running. So that's what I want you to think about. Don't make the mistake I did, because it was really stupid to run sick or run hurt. Okay, another one that none of you need to do, it's a mistake I made, is I had a goatee for a little while early in college. I had a goatee. You don't need to grow one. All right. You think it's a good idea. It's not. I'm just telling you, it's It's really not. There's like 4 people, I think, in history that have pulled off a goatee, and you don't know any of them personally, and you're not one of them. I also am not one of them, and I have pictures now, of me with a goatee, and it stinks because underneath the goatee, not that bad, but with the goatee, oof, I look like I'm in a Nickelback cover band, which is not a good thing. That's not the look I was going for. It's not the look I want to be going for. And it's the look that I've got. So that was a long time ago, but it was a mistake I still remember. And every once in a while I'm going through some old pictures I stumble across. And after I yell and someone in the family says, "Is everything okay down there? Did you fall?" And I say, "No, I just saw a picture of me with a goatee." And then I'll hear someone upstairs scream, and I'll say, "Are you okay?" And they'll say, "Yeah, I forgot that you had a goatee." And then the image flashed in my head, and then we both scream because there it is. There's that image again in our head of me with the goatee. So yeah, just don't grow a goatee. That one really doesn't have anything to do with running, but I will say this: if you have cool action shots that are potentially going to be taken of you, the goatee's gonna ruin it. And then no one's going to listen to the rest of the story. I mean, no matter what the story is, you could say, "This is me winning the Olympic 5K," and everyone's going to be like, "That's good, but can I ask you about the goatee?" So just, no goatee. Okay, another one that is a mistake I made that you don't need to make is I had a pepperoni stromboli from a mall in New Jersey the day before a really big race, and not just the day before, the night before a really big race, and not just the night before, it was the night before a morning race. So more or less the last thing I ate prior to taking the line was a pepperoni stromboli from the mall in New Jersey. So you can imagine it wasn't just greasy, it was just grease. And I don't even know when they made this stromboli. I mean, it wasn't even very good. And I mean, you know what happened next. That nothing good is what happened next. I felt that stromboli the entire race. And I had the grease right there at all times, just a burp away, really. And not to kind of gross you out, but it was, I mean, there's no way around it. It was gross. And here's the thing. I consistently ate pasta the night before because I love pasta. And I had an option to have pasta, even at this mall. Now, first of all, why I was at the mall, I don't remember. That was a bad decision to begin with. But I was at the mall. There was an option to have pasta there at the mall. It wouldn't have been the best pasta, but it would have been a better choice than a pepperoni stromboli. So really, this one is very specific, but I think we can broaden it out. I mean, technically, it's don't have a pepperoni stromboli the night before a morning race. But I think the larger lesson is just don't take big risks with what you're eating for dinner the night before a morning race. I think the further out in the day the race, the more risks you can take. I don't think you need to be taking risks the night before. I don't think you need to be pushing the envelope because the race the next day is at night and you've got 24 hours. I stick with what works. Stick with what you've enjoyed and you have a history with. I did not have a history with pepperoni strombolis from the mall in New Jersey. I'll just tell you that. And I since then, I have not had another one. Okay, we're going to wrap this up pretty soon. I mean, like I said, I could be telling you mistakes for a really long time, but here's another one. I mistakenly believed I could get hydrated on a run. And I had planned out, okay, it's going to be hot, it's going to be humid. Let's make sure that we're running by water fountains. Let's make sure we have access to, some drinks in a few places. But let me just tell you the best rule if you're going to go for a run when it's hot or humid, or really anytime. The best way to stay hydrated on a run is to first and foremost be hydrated before the run. And I did not do that. I spent time preparing for on the run. And I think I did that because I realized I had not prepared for before the run. So if you want to be hydrated on a run, the best thing you can do is to be hydrated before the run. So don't make the mistake I did, which was mistakenly believing, not only can I maintain hydration on a run, I can get hydrated and then maintain hydration on the run. And the answer is no. You can't. You don't want to be playing catch up with hydration or fueling on a run. You want to start the run fueled, you want to start the run hydrated, and then try to maintain that fueling and maintain that hydration. All right? Does that sound good? I hope so, because, well, that's the answer. Okay, last one. I have said I hate the sport, and I don't hate the sport. And I don't say it really anymore, but when I was younger, I used to. And I had a few periods when I was not so young where I would do that. And really what I would do is I felt like, well, the sport can take it. I mean, if I'm looking back at it, it was me blaming the sport as opposed to accepting responsibility for a lot of the things that I was doing wrong. And I don't hate the sport. And I'm just going to end with this one because I think it's important for you to understand the sport. Running wants you to enjoy it. Running wants you to have a good time. Running wants you to get stronger and feel stronger. Running wants you to be more confident and feel more confident. Running wants you to have more joy when you're running and experience more joy while you're running. Running wants you to be more wholly yourself, WHOLLY, more wholly yourself and not less of who you really are when you go for a run. Running wants you to know and feel and understand that you have a place on the starting line and that you are a valid, important, vital member of this community. And for me personally, it was me not very happy about the fact that I was very lazy, making bad decisions, making poor choices. And what I did was I blamed running. I said, I hate running. It's asking too much from me. I'm not running well. It's not fun. And it wasn't fun and I wasn't running well. But it wasn't fun because I wasn't committing to it. And I wasn't running well because I was making those bad decisions. And it was just way easier for me to blame running than it was for me to blame myself. And the sport never did anything to me but give me an opportunity to challenge myself, run with some amazing people, make great teammates and friendships, experience some wild, wild, wild moments and cities and places and people and things and feelings. And yeah, I'm eternally grateful to it. And I don't hate it. I do hate how I acted towards it, though. And that's something I remind myself when I'm going through a tough time with this sport or just a tough time in life and I'm starting to blame running a little bit. Like what? Like I don't want to go for a run. This sucks. And well, I'm tired. Okay, I get it. I don't need to blast running because I'm tired. I don't need to get upset at running because I committed to a race that is important to me and now I'm just going through one of the ebbs and flows of high inspiration or low motivation or feeling like no motivation. And now I'm getting bitter and angry at running because it's doing exactly what it said it would do, which is challenge me, give me an opportunity to struggle a little bit. And if need be, it's always willing to say, you know what, just come back tomorrow. You need a day away. You need to rest. You need to recover because your best running will happen when you're at your healthiest, when you're at your strongest, when you're at your most confident. That's when running will be its best. So if you're doing things that are making you weaker, making you more stressed, making you angrier, more bitter, less confident, less who you really are, the running won't be as good. The running wants you to be at your best so you can have your best run. So don't make those mistakes like I did. All right? That's the podcast. Yeah, it is. Exciting, right? And I'm back in town, which is kind of cool. And I was wondering, like, what am I going to do this week? Because I got to tell you, I'm tired. I'm tired from traveling. Wayworn is the word that I'm thinking of, which is a real word, by the way. It has to do with being like a weary traveler. Wayworn, I love it. No one uses it anymore. It's a great word. Feel free to use it. And listen, I'm just saying, since you probably don't use it, and now you're going to use it, all you need to do is just a little spot check where you say, yep, Coach Bennett taught me that one, wayworn. Unless you're going to pretend like you already knew the word wayworn, which you didn't. Just be honest. You didn't. You heard it here. Now you're using it all the time. And everyone's like, geez, Sally's really smart. Like, that's pretty amazing. You hear her use the word wayworn? Yeah, well, she should have said she heard it from me, but she didn't. Whatever. I'm not bitter. It's not a big deal. Anyway, thank you for listening to episode 35 of Coach Bennett's podcast. Thank you for subscribing if you are a subscriber. Thank you for subscribing if you're about to subscribe. If you're not a subscriber right now, whether it's on Spotify or Apple or Google Podcasts or Overcast or any of the different places that you can listen to Coach Bennett's podcast, thank you for sharing the podcast, and thank you for taking care of yourself and taking care of each other. Because if you do that, well, then we're a better world, right? I think so. All right, until next time, I'm Coach Bennett. I'll meet you on your next starting line. Thank you so much for listening to Coach Bennett's podcast today. And if you're not already following or subscribed to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening, well, I really wish you would because it helps a lot. Also, check out the show notes because you'll find a link to Coach Bennett's newsletter, as well as all the social media sites that I'm on. Places like Threads and Facebook and Instagram and Mastodon and YouTube, and even the artist formerly known as Twitter, whatever that dumpster fire is called today. You'll find a link to it because I'm on there. Thank you so much again for listening, and until next time, take care of yourself.